You know, it feels like we're living through the fastest technological shift in human history. And I'm not just talking about a new app or a cool gadget. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, a force that's, well, fundamentally rewriting the rules of our world. This isn't just another revolution, it's an accelerating one.
To really get a handle on the scale of what's happening, we need a little context. And this quote from the Center for AI Safety, it just frames it perfectly. That comfortable, kind of predictable pace of change that we're all used to, yeah, that's gone. We're not just watching history anymore, we are living through it in fast forward.
So how do we even begin to make sense of all this? Well, here's our roadmap. First, we're going to dig into why this revolution feels so incredibly fast. Then we'll look at the promises and, the perils that AI presents right now, today. From there, we'll dive into the high-stakes race to build the future, tackle the huge challenge of controlling superintelligence, and finally, ask the big one: what do we do to navigate this new world safely?
All right, let's start with that acceleration. The subtitle here says, "From millennia to moments." And you know what? That is not an exaggeration. Let me show you what I mean.
This timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? The agricultural revolution, that took thousands of years to unfold. Then the industrial revolution came along and it took a few centuries. But the AI revolution, we're talking about a matter of decades. The gap between these world-changing events is just shrinking exponentially. It's less like a steady march of progress and more like a rocket ship just hitting that vertical climb.
So that's the speed we're dealing with. But what does it actually mean for us, you and me, right now? Because this stuff isn't science fiction anymore. AI is already having this massive, tangible impact on our lives, and it's bringing both some incredible promise and some really serious peril.
When you look at the job market, AI's effect really boils down to two big competing forces. On one side, you've got displacement. That's where AI automates and straight up replaces human tasks. But on the other side, you've got complementarity, which is where AI becomes this powerful tool that actually augments our skills, making us more creative and more effective.
And look, this isn't just a theory. This data from a Harvard Business School study shows the shift happening in real time. Right after ChatGPT was released, job postings for roles that are easy to automate, they dropped significantly. But at the same time, postings for jobs where AI can help a person, where it can augment their skills, those grew like crazy. The workforce is already shifting under our feet.
Here's the thing, though. This new technology isn't a neutral force. The same AI systems that are helping out in some jobs are being trained on our own historical data. And that data, well, it's often full of our own human biases. And that means the benefits and the risks aren't being spread around equally, which leads us to this really critical problem of algorithmic bias. Just take a look at this study on a medical AI. It was designed to predict outcomes for heart pump patients. Now, the algorithm initially used race as a factor. But here's the crazy part. When the researchers took race out of the equation, the prediction accuracy didn't drop at all, not one bit. So why was it in there? Well, it turns out race was just being used as a crude proxy for other things, like access to care or social conditions. Using it didn't make the AI smarter. It just baked in historical inequality without actually solving the real problems. And the dangers go way beyond just unintentional bias. Now we have people who are actively weaponizing AI. And a perfect example of that is the deepfake. We're talking about AI-generated videos and audio that are so realistic, it's almost impossible to tell them apart from reality. It's an incredibly powerful tool for spreading disinformation and manipulating public opinion on a scale we've just never seen before. And all of this brings us to Section 3, the race to the future. Because these incredibly powerful tools aren't being developed in some quiet, careful lab. Oh no. They're being built in the middle of this fierce competition between corporations and entire nations. And that's creating enormous systemic risks for all of us.
This quote from Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, it just perfectly captures the mindset. It's a race. And what happens when you're in a race? The number one priority is speed, sometimes at the expense of everything else. And that rush, that need for speed, creates some very real dangers. I mean, think about the old story of the Ford Pinto, where a race to get a car to market led them to ignore a fatal design flaw.
In the AI race, the stakes are so much higher. They're global. Rushing can mean cutting corners on safety, deploying unstable systems, and dangerously escalating tensions with things like AI-driven cyber warfare, or even autonomous weapons.
So let's just imagine how this could play out in the military. It starts off innocently enough, right? AI just helps commanders analyze data. But then, pretty soon, the AI starts making better, faster tactical decisions than the humans. The pace of conflict just accelerates until our minds literally can't keep up. And at that point, what do? Handing over the final kill decision to the machine might seem like the only way to avoid losing. It's this slow, gradual slide into fully automated warfare. Which, of course, leads us to the biggest, most mind-bending risk of them all. Section 4. The rogue AI problem. What happens when we actually succeed? What happens when we build something that is far, far more intelligent than we are? How in the world do we keep it under control?
So the term for this is artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Now, this is not like the AI we have today, which is really good at specific tasks. No, AGI would be an intelligence that can reason, learn, and create across basically every domain, just like a human can, but maybe much, much better.
You know, the mathematician I.J. Good saw this coming all the way back in 1965. He understood that once you create a machine that's smarter than its creators, well, that machine can then turn around and design an even smarter machine. And that could trigger what he called an intelligence explosion that would leave humanity completely in the dust.
So why would it be so powerful? Well, it just has some fundamental advantages over our squishy biological brains. Its core components, computer transistors, they operate millions of times faster than our neurons. You can scale it up just by adding more computers. Its memory is perfect, and a lesson learned by one AI can be instantly and perfectly copied to millions of others. I mean, that is a recipe for an absolutely unprecedented level of intelligence.
And this right here, this brings us to the core challenge, what researchers call the alignment problem. How do we give a superintelligence its goals in a way that is guaranteed to stay beneficial to us forever? I mean, how do you command something that's vastly smarter than you are and make sure it doesn't find some clever loophole or achieve its goals in a way that we would find completely catastrophic? Honestly, solving this might be the single most important task humanity has ever faced.
Which brings us to our final section, navigating our AI future. Okay, so we've laid out the risks, and they are huge. The big question now is, what can we actually do about them? What are the real paths forward for mitigation, for regulation, and for cooperation?
Well, the very first step is just admitting where our priorities are right now. And frankly, they're wildly imbalanced. Look at this. For every 50 research papers published on making AI more powerful and more capable, there's only one single paper published on how to make it safe. 50 to 1. That ratio, it absolutely has to change.
So what does changing that ratio actually look like? Well, experts have proposed a whole suite of solutions. First, we have to massively increase funding for the technical safety research. Second, AI labs need to go through rigorous external audits, what they call red teaming, to find the flaws before these things are released. Third, we need clear laws that hold companies liable for the harm their AI causes. And finally, none of this works without international cooperation to prevent a race to the bottom, making sure the most reckless person in the room doesn't set the pace for everyone else.
You know, at the end of the day, it all comes down to this single, civilization-defining question. AI could be the key to solving our greatest challenges, everything from disease to climate change. But that incredible promise is balanced on a razor's edge. This isn't some problem for our grandkids to figure out. This is the challenge for our generation. And the choices we make, right here, right now, are going to determine the entire future of humanity.